Curling fans, as America's best curling teams prepare to compete on the world stage, you've come to the one place with everything you need involving USA Curling. It's the Extra In podcast with Price Atkinson. Get ready for everything that you need to know. News, interviews, points of view, anything involving Team USA forming and the 2018 Winter Olympics in South Korea for Team USA Curling is found here. It's the Extra In podcast with Price Atkinson and the 12th In Sports Network crew, powered by Isagenix.
Welcome into the inaugural, very first episode of the Extra In podcast. I'm Price Atkinson, joined by Joe Calabrese, the 12th In Sports Network, powered by Isagenix here. The Extra In podcast going to be coming to you here all fall as we get you ready for the upcoming U.S. Olympic curling trials in Omaha, Nebraska. Beautiful Baxter Arena. 7 teams going to take the ice. What we will be doing here, we'll be previewing the 7 teams that will be competing in Omaha. That's just a little bit of what you'll hear on the Extra In podcast as we take you through the fall right up until Omaha and live from Omaha at some point is our hope. But Joe, excited about this venture, partnering with you guys. I am jacked. This has been several months in the making, and I'm glad we are finally here at this point, my friend.
Yeah, me too, Price. This is sort of a dream of mine to kind of work on something like this with somebody who loves the sport as much as I do, and I know that that's exactly what you're all about, Price. And so I can't be more excited because I know we've lined up some great interviews. We have also some terrific contests and for our listeners. So if you're listening to this podcast, you'll have the opportunity to win some fabulous prizes. We have valued those at approximately $3,000 over the course of the initial run of this podcast. So you're going to want to stay tuned each and every week. And our first contest is to win a rock watcher. And if you don't know what a rock watcher is, it's that device that you attach to a broom, and it takes the split times of rocks. And it's pretty exciting. We'll talk about that a little bit later, but I just want to kind of preview that as we move into this podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess really first thing out of the gate is to let everybody know where you can find the Extra In podcast all season, especially as we go through November and hopefully far beyond that. But as we get ready really through these next couple months for the U.S. Olympic curling trials here in Omaha, how can you get the Extra In podcast? It's real simple, real easy. It's free every single week. We'll come out on Thursdays. Apple Podcast, Stitcher, Google Play, but more importantly, TESN.US/podcast. But just go to 12th In Sports Network online, TESN.US. There are a myriad of ways on your smartphone. If you go to the Apple Podcast app, if you download the Stitcher app, you can get them right there real easy, and you will be notified when a new Extra In pops up every single week. Joe, it could not be a whole lot easier to get us.
No, you're going to be able to find us wherever you can find podcasts. That's our goal. And they're free, and it's going to be packed with a lot of information about USA Curling. So you're going to want to get yourself ready for those trials in November, because we certainly are.
Yeah, absolutely. And, one thing I'll just share with everybody, like, rate, and share. You're going to hear that a lot on every episode. But if you like what you hear, let us know. Let your friends know. Like it on Facebook, like it on Twitter. Like it, most importantly, on the Apple Podcast iTunes website there, because if you like it, if you rate it, that will help others find us easier. So it's real simple. Just like us. It takes one click if you want to write a review. It take you maybe all of a minute to 2 minutes tops. Just write a little something what you liked. We will try and read some of those here as we move forward through the fall. And certainly, most importantly, if you really do like it, and we hope you do, hope you'll share it with your friends. Retweet it on Twitter, share it on Facebook, email links around. There's things that we're going to do, move through and improve, change as we move on. Want to hear all your feedback, good and bad. That is always a good thing for what we can do better here on the Extra In podcast, Joe.
Yeah, Price, one thing we probably ought to do is let people know sort of how this whole podcast is going to work. we'll have some different interviews. We talked a little bit about that. We're also going to have a roundtable, and today's roundtable guest is Gerry Geurts from CurlingZone. And so after our interview segment, we'll be doing a little bit of roundtable discussion about the topic of the week. And, those topics of the week are going to have a lot to do with all those teams that are heading to the trials. But they're really all about what USA Curling is doing right here and now and what they ought to be doing in the future, not just the organization, but all the clubs and members of USA Curling to try to improve and get us to the point where we are perennial contenders at those Olympics. That's sort of the goal.
Yeah, absolutely. And, these next 2 months, as you mentioned, feature guest interviews every single week. And our first feature episode or feature guest interview here will be coming up in the very next segment. Coach Phill Drobnick, one of the high performance coaches there, is going to talk with us about a myriad of topics, a conversation you won't want to miss. And as you mentioned, Gerry Geurts with our roundtable coming up after that. But a lot of great interviews. We'll get to know the names. Certainly, a lot of the names and the faces, but you'll learn a little bit more about them, maybe, Joe, here as we move through the fall and, sit down and talk with 1, 2, 3 members of each team. It'll usually be 2 members each team, a skip and somebody else, but, tried to sprinkle them out, mix them up differently, ahead of the trials because, there's a whole lot more to the faces and the names of these teams, the team dynamics and, what these guys like to do on and off the ice. Just some great stories I think you'll hear from the athletes this fall.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, what's different about this podcast as opposed to maybe other curling podcasts out there, which are all terrific, don't get me wrong, but I think we're going to be interviewing athletes at length from USA Curling to a level that really nobody else has done before. And I'm real excited about that because we're going to get to know the players as people and not just as curlers. We love those fifth end segments that you do, Price. But we only get a few questions in those 5 minutes, and this gives us a chance to really explore these athletes and their lives a little bit deeper.
Yeah, well, that's a great segue because I think we certainly got to also mention who are we? I mean, if you're listening to this, the 12th End Sports Network, probably very familiar to curling fans for several years as UNBA launched the 12th End Sports Network. I'll let you get into that. But real quick about me, Price Atkinson. I'm born here in Greenville, South Carolina. People say, well, where's the accent from? Yeah, it's from living here in the deep, dirty South. But you guys at the 12th End Sports Network, were fortunate enough to reach out a hand to me back in January and February and allowed me to be a part of my first nationals, and it was just an experience that people tell me to shut up about all the time, just because it was just so fantastic, and the chance to work with you all, out in Everett, Washington, back in February is just an experience. I said, you know what, you got to go and be a part of the curling community, because that's the one thing that I came away from that experience working with you guys directly and everybody around the sport. There is something that is special, different, genuine about the sport of curling that drew me in the minute I met you guys and walked into that building, and it carried through to the very last stone of the men's championship there in Washington, Joe.
Well, thanks so much, Price. It's really the reason why I got drawn to curling in the first place were the people involved. My story is a little different than yours. I'm in Rochester, New York, so you may notice my accent too. But I've been curling for probably about 15 years at the Rochester Curling Club. Have kind of grown up through the ranks of being an adult who's learned to curl. And my business partner, Brian Anderson, and I have been curling together for probably 8 years. And we've been doing the 12th End Sports Network for about 6 years. And the idea behind it has always been to try to present the game in a webcast form that's as good as anything that you might see on TV. And so we are really driven, the two of us, to try to improve our webcasts to the point that you can't notice the difference between us and TV. What's also really great about the 12th End Sports Network is that we've empowered local curling clubs to also do very high quality webcasts from their curling clubs. So we work with these affiliates. I think we have about 8 of them right now, and they're all across the country. And we actually have one in Scotland as well. So they have the opportunity to use our software, connect through CurlingZone to do scoring and some other nifty features. And it's pretty exciting because, it presents the game in a way that you can, share with your family, your friends, all the people at work. Hey, I'm playing this event this weekend, and you can check it out online on TESN.US.
Yeah, and we got to make sure to let you, speaking of TESN, need to let everybody know ways you connect with us on social media, certainly at 12th End Sports on Twitter, the 12th End Sports Network there on Facebook. You can connect with me at Price Atkinson on Twitter. Joe, you want to throw out your Twitter handle so they can go straight to the source?
Sure. And that's because I'm a Buffalo Bills fan. Price, we're going to have to talk next week about that Panthers-Bills matchup. I have a feeling the Bills are in some deep trouble, but we'll get to that next week.
Hey, the Panthers and the Bills seem like they're in bed together with all these different trades, releasing guys from the front office, moving from each team. We can keep that a special segment here on the 12th and the Extra End podcast. But appreciate you tuning into us wherever you are. Thanks for downloading, listening, taking the time. We got a lot of great stuff for you coming up this season on the Extra End podcast. And, Joe, a really cool contest right here out of the gate. You mentioned a lot of the prizes totaling $3,000. We got a great one right off the bat.
Yeah, absolutely. The Rock Watcher is the first custom designed timing solution for curlers. The custom design features of this Rock Watcher are combined with the patented timer band. It's the perfect timing solution for all curlers. Many world-class and recreational curlers are taking advantage of the Rock Watcher concept and consider it to be an important part of their equipment. Year after year, Rock Watcher has proven to be the champion of all timers. Visit rockwatcher.ca for more information. This week, you have an opportunity to win a Rock Watcher of your very own. Just sign up on our website. That's www.tesn.us/podcast. and use the widget on the upper right-hand side of the page for your chance to win. And we're going to announce our winner next week.
Awesome. This is great stuff. You don't want to miss any of the contests. Easy to get involved, easy to sign up, as Joe just said right there. All right, let's go ahead and get out of here. When we come back, our first featured guest interview, Coach Phill Drobnick of the U.S. High Performance Team, one of the coaches. We will talk with him next here. Great conversation you'll want to hear on the Extra End podcast. Price Atkinson, Joe Calabrese, the 12th End Sports Network, powered by Isagenix here, the Extra End podcast all season as we get ready for the U.S. Olympic trials in Omaha, Nebraska. We'll be right back here on the Extra End.
Have you tried different weight loss programs and are still looking for results? I was too until I found Isagenix, and it didn't take long before I started getting the results that I wanted. Isagenix is a complete 9 or 30-day weight loss, energy, performance, and health aging program with over 550,000 customers in 7 countries. Isagenix's science-backed ingredients and products are rigorously tested for safety and will help nourish your body and help boost your weight loss efforts by gently cleansing and nourishing your body. Isagenix's cleansing and fat-burning system has helped me relieve daily stress and given me even more energy to play with my 2 kids from sunup to sundown. My personal Isagenix associate, Sarah Schuster, she helped me take control of my health and, most importantly, my life. Sarah walked me through the entire process, answered every single question, and most importantly, serves as my personal daily cheerleader. She can do the same for you and more. Give Sarah a call with the keyword curling at 218-391-1566. Again, the keyword curling. Give Sarah a call, 218-391-1566, and she'll waive your 1-year membership fee. Stop making excuses and start taking control. Let Sarah get you started on a healthier life. Like Isagenix did it for me, and it can do it for you.
Welcome back into the Extra End podcast here in the 12th End Sports Network, powered by Isagenix, and now cannot wait to catch up with one of my favorites here, one of the members of the USA Curling High Performance staff, coaching staff, Phill Drobnick. Phil, what's happening today?
Hey, out in Regina, getting ourselves ready for the first slam of the season.
Yeah, you guys got you got your hands full. A big time event there in Regina is both the men's teams you'll be working with, John Schuster and Heater McCormick. Those guys are in the tier 1 of a 2-tiered event. Just a fantastic event, great competition here early in the season. Before we get into that, Coach Drobnick, talk to us about one thing, and this is going to be our jumping off point, is really, the last Olympic cycle. You were there in 2010 with John Schuster there in the last Olympics. But what did you guys, as a staff, as the high-performance staff at USA Curling, in the teams, what did you all take away from that last cycle that changed to improve to get ready for this cycle that we are now just entering right now?
Well, there's no doubt that the game is being professionalized, and athletes are curling full time and around the calendar year, and we just needed to make some changes in the program, and through the leadership of Derek Brown and Rick Patsky, they implemented a program of where a lot of coaching, focus on coaching, making the athletes better, giving them access to world-class coaches, world-class trainers, sports psychology. We brought in an awesome sports psychologist, Carly Anderson, who's been working with our teams. So just a change in the way we did things, and really focusing in on training year-round.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is some of the biggest changes.
Yeah, as we continue with Phill Drobnick, national team coach with USA Curling's High Performance Program. You can check him out on Twitter at Coach Phill. That's 2 L's there on the end. He is a must-follow, let me tell you. All right, the off-season program you guys had, Coach Drobnick, as you guys worked through, it was a very short summer, I know, with the season ending in April. There's really not much of a summer, so to speak, for the teams as you get right back in the gym, a lot of dry land training. What was the focus of this quote-unquote off-season, but more importantly, the summer training program? What was it that you guys tried to hammer on and work on as you get ready to hit the ice right now?
I took my teams, I had a couple camps in late April and throughout May with the 3 teams I'm working with, and we focused early, I guess that would be late spring, but early in that training on what do we need to change from last year to this year to get better, and worked on technical work. We got them all on the camera working technical things out, so that way when they came back in June, we did another camp in June where we focused on technical and really so we could when we came into camp in August, that the teams could just focus on implementing team systems and just making some tweaks technical wise, and we were able to do that. Then of course we had our training camp in Colorado Springs for all the teams, which is awesome, just an awesome opportunity for the teams to go out and spend a week at the Olympic Training Center and really start to build that Team USA bond amongst each other. And so we really spent a lot of time analyzing the teams and watching videos and setting up the season and getting the teams mentally prepared for the what's to come. And then obviously they spent a ton of time out there with Brian McWilliams, our trainer. So every day they're with him, getting their pretty much their off season workout plan for the month of July and August. So it was a really good summer. It went really quick. The teams worked their butts off and spent a ton of time in the gym. We gave them pretty much the month of July off for ice time. That was optional. So if they wanted to be there, they obviously could be, but nothing planned in July. And then we got them hit them hard in August. My teams all came in to Blaine a couple of different times and had a couple different camps and get them on the ice so they're ready to go.
All right, Coach, so let's get into your 3 teams. You got 1 on the women's side and 2 on the men's side. Let's start on the men's side as you guys get ready to compete here this week in Regina. And both of your teams are going to be in that Tier 1 competition of the 2-tier event, the first Slam on Tour this year. And John Schuster and Heater McCormick. Let's start with John Schuster because certainly a household name, especially when it comes to USA Curling, and certainly probably a lot of fans of the Olympics as a 3-time Olympian going for his 4th straight Olympics. What about this team, Team Schuster? These guys were fantastic at nationals. They were outstanding. Finished 4th at the Worlds. They just could not get past Switzerland in a couple times. But this is a team right now. Matt Hamilton playing some really nice mixed doubles. I mean, John Schuster's playing. The makeup of this team seems like all the pieces are there once again.
Yeah, we're really excited to get they got the season started up in Winnipeg a couple weekends ago. Lost the final up there, but really excited to get back on the ice in the Slam here. These guys they have the total package. Tyler George, probably one of the best shot makers in the world, and definitely soft weight players in the world. Has a great draw game, great touch game. And Johnny just knows how to manage a game. He's definitely a world-class skip. He can go up against anyone and manage a game against anyone and then out-skip anyone. So they've got a unique ability there with that team, and it's shown on the world level. Finishing the last 3 world championships, they had a 5th, a 3rd, and a 4th place finish. So they're right there. Knocking at the door. They've got themselves set up in a really good spot. If they can win the trials in November, they'll definitely be a medal contender at the Olympics. And then they also have as you said, Matt Hamilton's throwing a good stone at second. He's playing mixed doubles. Had a great year last year. Won 2 national championships. And John Lansdowne is just a veteran at his age. Just a veteran lead. He knows game management, he knows front end management, and he's a great guy for Johnny. He's his go-to guy on the ice, and they're a real solid team. And I look for them to continue their successes throughout the World Curling Tour season up into the trials.
Yeah, it's John Schuster and crew. One of the things, and when I saw him a couple weeks ago, I mean, he looks fantastic in the best shape of his life. But one of the things I asked him about was, did the 3rd place bronze medal in the 2016 World Championships, did that confirm that you guys, there's no question with some of the things that have happened in the Olympic Games, did that confirm that, look, remove any of the mental hurdles? And I mean, he quickly dismissed it with me, but I mean, there's no question he can compete, and John Schuster's one of the top skips in the world, but doing it at the Olympics I know has been a challenge. But did that bronze medal, and even though they got 4th, this was a team that could have easily been on the podium this past spring at the World Championships. Do you think that's unlocked something with this team going into the obviously vying for an Olympic bid again?
Well, I would say absolutely in confidence. Just the ability to prove to the world that we are a medal contender. And yeah, maybe we didn't have a great Olympics in 10 and 14, but they also going into 2010 and 2014, those teams only played in 1 World Championship. Yep. And now they're coming into a trials with 3 World Championships under their belt. And if they're the Olympic team, there's no doubt. Teams know this team comparative to the 2 teams before that. They've been on the Slam scene. They've been in the top 15 in the world, consistently over the last 3 years. So they are definitely it's a different team, and it's changed motivation and expectations as well.
All right, let's pivot over as we're talking with Phill Drobnick, member of the national team coaching staff and the USA Curling's high performance program. Again, follow him on Twitter at Coach Phill 2Ls. And you move over to Heater McCormick. You got Heath McCormick's team with Chris Plies, Tom Howell, Corey Dropkin. Had a good finish. Made the semis at Oakville. So got off to a pretty good start there as they get ready to take the ice in Regina. What about the makeup of this team? You got 2 really youthful guys on the front end and a couple guys who have been around in a while, in Chris and Heater on the back end.
Yeah, this is just a fun team. I mean, they're dynamic. They've got the veteran skip and Heath McCormick. They've got the Chris Plies, who's been around forever as well at the age of 30, And then the two young guys coming in, Tom Howell and Corey Dropkin. These guys just started juniors a couple years now and had a pretty successful junior career. It's just a perfect setup because you got two guys that have embraced the front end position, which you need on a team, and they've worked their tails off to become, two of the best sweepers in the world. I mean, their goal isn't to be the two best sweepers in the country; it's to be the two best sweepers in the world. And they've worked their butts off in the gym and practice sweeping and practice judging, and this team has worked. They're pretty new. Last year was their first year, but they knew that they had a lot of work ahead of them. And John set the bar for all these teams, and these guys are working as hard as they can to get to that bar so that they're the best prepared team in the trials.
One of the things that struck me about this team, Coach, back in Nationals in February was, this was a team that I know came away very, very disappointed because all they had to do, correct me if I'm wrong, had to make the playoffs at Nationals to go to Worlds, and they came up short and did not get to go to Worlds because of it. And I see the makeup when I see Tom Howell and I saw Corey, after, as things were moving on and they didn't make the playoffs, and even after a couple of losses in the middle of the week, those two guys, especially having played together for so long, having had a very successful junior career, that stood out to me to see the competitiveness and the anger that losing is not acceptable to them. They were angry. They weren't happy. I could see a competitive fire in those two guys that was different than a lot of other players I've seen.
Yeah, they are. They're very competitive. They are out there to win, and they the biggest takeaway for their nationals, and most people would look at it as a disappointing finish and disappointing not to get to the Worlds, but sometimes you got to get knocked down before so you can get back up, and that was kind of their knockdown stage. And they had a great season. They got knocked down at nationals, and it forced them or drove them to work even harder this off season and know that they still had a lot of work to do to prepare themselves for the trials. So, they even went out played in the European Masters in April and had a good showing there, got to play against a bunch of the European teams. So they got that European experience that they might, they missed out on not getting at the World. So, this team is very determined and working their tails off. So it's going to be fun to see how they play in Omaha in November.
Yeah, excited to see them take the ice, and was excited to see a familiar face just a few weeks ago in an interview we'll bring you next week with Richie Ruohonen. Really insightful stuff, but catching up with him last a couple weeks ago. But Richie Ruohonen, the added, is the fifth. I don't want to call him an alternate, but the fifth member of this team, and really in a lot of ways another coach kind of you add to the bench and going to do some analytical work. Right there with Richie added. What does that do bringing him on board? A guy that's been around, you add Dr. Double to the mix, that only can make you better as a team.
Yeah, for sure. He's, when he was brought on, we had a good conversation about, these guys need some mentoring, and he's the guy to do it. They're young, and they needed to compete with a John Schuster team and a Brady Clark team. And a Craig Brown team, who the athletes have all been around for 5 to 10 to 20 years, and then we've got with Corey and Tom, they don't have quite that experience. So bringing in Richie adds that second eye, that helpful insight that he can give those guys, and it'll just carry them even further. So it's a great addition to the team. He's coming up with a team here in the Slam this week, so it'll be great to have him working with the guys all season long.
All right, moving over to the women's team, your one women's team that you got Corey Christensen. You got Corey Christensen obviously skipping that team, the youngest of the three high-performance women's teams. And then, the Anderson twins and Jenna Martin, recently married. Talk about this is the young, youthful team of the three high-performance squads. Just talk about, I know they bring just such a youthful energy to the ice, and they certainly have a lot of great curling in front of them, but certainly one of the teams that's going to be on the ice there in Omaha.
Yeah, they're coming into Omaha as probably the third seed, and they know that. And they know where they're at. I mean, both teams were finished higher than them above in the order of merit last year and at nationals. But this team is they're very young, but they've been around the block. They've played a lot together. They've got a lot of team chemistry. They're sponges, so they're great to coach. I mean, they want everything you can give them, and they have a drive to continue to get better every time they step on the ice. We worked really hard on some things in the off season. We started, they were the team in particular that we started our camps in April, and we outlined what we wanted to achieve in the summer, and I felt really confident about what we did this summer. And now they played in Oakville last weekend. Didn't have the best results, but they actually played better than their results showed. They were happy with some things that we were working on, and the goal for them is November. And right now, it's every weekend they're on the ice, they're learning, they're improving. The goal is to make sure that they're peaking at the right time. So they're in the right mindset for that. And they know they've got an uphill battle, and they know they've got to work harder than the other team. So they've got a ton of talent, and their ultimate goal was the 2022 Olympics, back 4 or 5 years ago, and now they've gotten this platter handed to them and an opportunity to go to the 2018 games. So make the best of it, and that's exactly what they're doing. And they're just going to keep working and taking care of business, and hoping to come into trials and surprise some teams and find themselves hopefully in the best of three to play for a shot to go to the Olympics.
Well, before we wrap up with Coach Phill Drobnick here, you guys are in Regina there. The Tour Challenge getting ready to get underway on Tuesday night. But John Schuster and Heater McCormick in the Tier 1. Just a gauntlet of a road. Schuster starts off as tough as you can probably get, Coach, with Kevin Cooey and Brad Gushu right out of the gate. But, talk about the guys on the men's side, and then on the women's side, I know there's not one of your two teams, but you got Jamie Sinclair and Nina. They're going to be competing in the Tier 2, which really is more, not even a Tier 2. I'd call it a Tier 1.5 with the star power down there.
Yeah, it's a great event. We were talking with John's team, and we got 3 world champions that are in our pool with Glenn Howard and last year's world champion Brad Gushu, and the year before Kevin Cooey. So nothing like coming up and getting the season rolling by playing a few world champions to get started. So they're really excited for the opportunity. They, last year they got off to a slow start in the slams, but the second half of the slam season, they were in a tiebreaker, they qualified, and then they lost another tiebreaker. So some real good takeaways from slam events last year. And, I look for those guys to be there at the end of the week. Even though they've got a really tough schedule, they can play with anyone, and they know that. So really, really looking forward to that. Then Heater's team, also a little different look in their pool, but they got the number 1 team in the world, Nicholas Adim, in it, and the Olympic, the Scottish Olympic team, Kyle Smith, Pat Simmons with his new team, and I think their round out is Simmons, Smith, and the other, Simmons, Smith, and Adim.
Yeah.
So that's a great pool too. So it's they're ready though.
Yeah.
They're coming off the ice last weekend too. So, and the ice in Oakville was slam quality ice. It was wonderful ice. So he's got an advantage of just playing last weekend.
Well, we wish you guys all the best up there in Regina. Just lay waste to that field. Go get them, Coach. I hope I hated not getting to see you a couple weeks ago. I know you had some things at home you had to tend to. Certainly our best wishes to you and your family. It stunk not seeing you. It did not make my week to see it sucked not seeing the Phil strut and swagger be able to come out of the coach's box and hit the ice there.
I'm saving it for trials.
Well, I can't wait to see it. I hope at least in the meantime, I hope the Midwest weather was good to you this summer. Were you able to get out and swing the sticks a few times a week before? I know that's not even going to be in the thought process of being able to try and play even 9 holes coming up here in a couple of weeks, if not now.
Right. Yeah. I didn't get quite as much as I'd like to get in, but I probably played better this summer than I had been. So maybe that's a good thing. Maybe I need to play less and it'll improve the game.
well, Coach Phill Drobnick, always the best. It's always a pleasure catching up with you. A member of the national team coaching staff with USA Curling's high performance program. All the best. Can't wait to see you soon, Coach Drobnick.
Hey, thanks, Price. Always great talking to you.
All right, we'll talk soon. That's Coach Phill Drobnick here on the Extra Extra In podcast. We'll be right back.
Price, it's a new curling season, and if you're looking to buy some new curling equipment, look no further than Hardline Curling. Whether you're just starting out or an elite curler, Hardline is the choice in high-performance and recreational curling equipment. Don't settle for cheap imitations. Hardline has been at the forefront of the most innovative curling equipment ever since they came onto the scene 7 years ago. Hardline values all their customers, which is why their customer service, like their equipment, is legendary. For those who play with the ice pad, they know it's the best curling brush out there. If you haven't experienced Hardline's ice pad, the time has definitely come to try it. Discover why more and more pro teams from around the world have chosen the ice pad, including world champions Team Gushu, as well as both U.S. men's and women's national champions Team Schuster and Team Sinclair. And Hardline isn't just curling brooms. They offer a full range of curling equipment to get your playing your best, including the Pro Slide delivery aid designed by Reed Carruthers, shoes and apparel. Support this wonderful sponsor of the Extra Extra End by going to www.TESN.US and clicking on Hardline's ice pad logo to see for yourself why Hardline is the number one choice for curling equipment.
Welcome back into the Extra Extra In podcast. Price Atkinson, Joe Calabrese, and now we are joined by the man from CurlingZone himself, President and CEO, Gerry Geurts. Gerry, what's happening in a faraway land also known as the Toronto airport?
Yeah, sitting in Pearson International Airport in Toronto. One from the Oakville Sioux South tanker, which just wrapped up today on Monday here, and off to Regina for the first Grand Slam of the season.
Yeah, well, let's get into it and let Joe pop in here too. But as you mentioned, the tanker this past weekend. Kind of give us the lay of the land and what went down there in Oakville as everybody kind of now starts turning and pivoting toward the first slam there in Regina with basically a 2-tiered event.
Yeah, that was last season. Oh yeah, the tier 2 in Regina. Yes. So here in Toronto, we had a big international field. Sorry, Oakville. Here in Oakville, we had a big international event, somewhere between 10 and 12 countries represented, which was really amazing to see. And at the end of the day, Silvana Tiranzoni defeated Sherry Madaw in the women's event. The Swiss girls looking to kind of break through this year with a spot in the Olympics. Tiranzoni has been the best Swiss team on tour for many years now, and they've struggled with some of the play down events. So a good start for them. And on the men's side, we've got a young team by the name of Bruce Mowat out of Scotland, and they defeated the Korean Olympic team skipped by Chang Min Kim in the men's final. So really interesting finals. I don't think anybody would have picked Mowat and Kim to get to the final in the men's field, but it was really interesting to see, and some good results by the U.S. teams this weekend too, which sets up the season well too.
Yeah, Gerry, it looks like Heater McCormick wound up in the semifinals in that event. Is that right?
Yeah, Heath ended up getting knocked out by. Man, my brain's starting to be a little fried right now, but the Korean team was who knocked out McCormick. Mowat ended up beating Tanner Horgan, junior team out of Northern Ontario in the semifinals. And then, of course, Brady Clark was playing amazing as well. He just ran into a tough match in his qualifying game and knocked out there. But Brady was looking really sharp this weekend, and was talking to him too, and he's feeling healthy again for the first time in a long time. So, they're going to be a true wild card at the trial, and off to a good start, even though they didn't cash a check in the playoffs.
Yeah, I saw Brady.
Yeah, it looks like he wound up.
Go ahead, Joe.
Sorry, it looks like he wound up 4-3 in the event. Played Corbett Rink, played Simmons and Brewster. Some quality wins there for him.
Yeah, it's a great showing for Brady's team, and then of course Heater's team as well. He beat Ray Liu in the quarterfinal. One of the teams in the running to represent China at the Olympic qualifying event, and fourth place finishers at the Olympics in 2014. So that's a great win for Heater and his team. Getting one of the potential Olympic teams in an important playoff game. So they're looking good too. Heater's feeling good, and I like the way that team looks.
Yeah, of course they have the addition of Richie Ruonen. I'm sure that you saw the extra coach in the box there as Richie joins up with Heater McCormick's rink as their alternate, fifth player. We'll actually have a conversation with Richie here on the Extra Action podcast next week. But you kind of add a little bit of another dynamic, a guy that had a fantastic nationals with Todd Burr's rink. And Richie, who now joins the Heater McCormick rink to make this push to the Olympics. What do you think about that addition for Heater and Plies and company?
One of the roles that Rich is going to take over is kind of the stats and analytics role as well, and research and scouting on opponents. So, I think that alone is going to add a big component to the team. We've spent some time going over numbers and everything, and it'll help them plan and build better game plans against some opponents and try and find some weaknesses. And of course, Rich, as a competitor on the ice, he's able to step in at pretty much any position. So, I think he adds a good component to that team, and he really wants to be a part of it and help towards the success of the team as well, which is great to see too.
Yes, you now turn your attention to Regina in the first slam of the season. Joe, pop in here anytime you want, but we're looking at this thing. You've got a lot of U.S. teams that are going to be playing, a bunch here in the Tier 1 and in the Tier 2 as well. I believe what you got John Schuster and Heater McCormick in the Tier 1. I'll let you explain the tiering and how this first slam, how this is going to set up, but certainly talk about the U.S. teams that are going to be there in Regina.
So, yeah, the Grand Slams for the longest time have been they started out as four major events, and one of the concerns or pushback from some of the people around the game was that we needed to find a way to go down a little further down the list and get some new teams and new blood into the event. So one of the events that the players kind of came up with and the idea behind it is the Tier 2 Tour Challenge. So the Tier 1 event is like any other Grand Slam, 15 teams, 3 pools of 5. Top 8 make the playoffs, and they play for their regular purse. Whereas then the next 10 teams on the order of merit, plus 5 regional entries, the best regional entries. So, for example, we've got the next 5 Saskatchewan teams playing in the Tour Challenge. So, essentially, you're looking at the top 25 to 30 teams playing in these Grand Slam events. The great thing about the Tier 2 is it's actually a stepping stone into a future Tier 1 event, a future Tour event, where the team who wins the event gets an all-expenses-paid trip to the Masters in Lloydminster at the end of October. So that Tier 2, they're playing for a $50,000 total purse. When you think about the entry fees there, teams are paying, I think, about $800 to $1,000. I can't remember the number offhand. 15 teams, that's $12,000 to $15,000 in entries. There's a huge sponsor top-up on top of that. And when you look at the field, there's nobody really better than anybody than them. They don't have to play any of the top teams. The top 15 aren't part of that event. So, it's such a great event for these teams to be a part of. And I know, talking to Greg Baldwin, who won it last year, and he was pretty excited to be back again playing for it, and they're looking for a spot back. So, look at Schuster and Heath McCormick. I think it's good to see them in the Tier 1 event. They're going to get a chance to play some of the top-ranked teams, some potential Olympic teams, and test their mettle for the trials, and then for them eventually, if one of those two is to win, and to go off to Pyeongchang, Korea for the Olympics in February. The women's side, we've got. Sorry, go ahead.
That's okay. I was just going to get to the women's side, Gerry, and I was looking at the women's teams in the Tier 2, and that's sort of where I want to focus on. That's where our U.S. teams are, Team Sinclair and Team Roth. But man, you talk about who's who of women's curlers. This Tier 2 field is loaded, isn't it?
Yeah, it really does become a strong event, and you see some names that shuffle down out of the top group. I believe Anna Sidorova ended up down there. You might have to help me with some of the other names.
Chelsea Carey.
Yep.
Yeah, and
Kelsey Rock.
There's just Stephanie Lawton. Yeah. I mean, there's just a number of really good teams here.
Yeah, we saw a big shuffle in the women's ranks last year, and this is the thing that the Grand Slams and the way the Order of Merit point system works now is that you can see a big change very quickly. In Canada, you look at the way the trials were set up, the top 7 get first based off of points and stuff. And Allison Flaxey, Casey Scheidegger, and Michelle Englot's teams, at the beginning of last season, I don't think anybody would have predicted that they would have been directly in based on where they ranked and everything. But they all had great seasons, whereas you saw a few teams struggle. And some of those you mentioned, Chelsea Carey's team, you got Chelsea Rock, Steph Lawton, they all had rough seasons, but they're all talented, and that they can put it all together and play well on any given day. So there's definitely some opportunities, and you're seeing this with the U.S. teams now too, with Nina Roth and Jamie Sinclair's teams having strong seasons last year, climbing up the rankings and really putting themselves in position to qualify for the Grand Slams for the duration of the season with a good start this year.
All right, let's pivot, Gerry. Let's, really kind of our topic du jour of this episode, the inaugural, the Extra and podcast here, presented by the 12th End Sports Network. Really the lessons learned from the last Olympic cycle as it relates to the U.S. teams. We know it's been certainly a disappointing last couple Olympics for United States curling. What do you think some of the biggest lessons and takeaways that USA Curling came away? Obviously, we know the changes with the high performance, but what do you think the biggest lessons that USA Curling learned from that last cycle?
I think it's night and day different how the teams are prepared going into this Olympic year compared to the year before. One of the big things you're seeing now is a team like John Schuster, for example, they are playing an elite level schedule. Their strength of field of events played and strength of schedule of opponents is right up there with the top 10 teams in the world. They are playing the games that they need to get the experience against teams that they're going to face at the Olympics. And curling is a funny sport that way. You play an opponent and you get comfortable against them. You can find the cracks and weaknesses and figure out how to beat them. You look at Schuster against a team like Nicholas Edin, and he won an important game at the end of the round robin at the Worlds, and then he won a game at the Champions Cup that he needed to win as well against Edin. And talking to John this summer with one of the training camps, he really feels confident against a team like Edin now, and until you play those top teams, it's almost a case where, a lot of them win games because, they've got that name brand and it adds to the, creates that intimidation factor out of the gate. And sometimes you got to play them a few times to realize that they're not perfect and get comfortable against those opponents. And I think this is something that I think we get into with the trials and the selection of teams and all that, and really at the end of the day, I think to be to be a team that's going to go to the Olympics, you have to have that game experience. You have to have played those top teams and day in and day out, and kind of been there. And Schuster's definitely a team that has shown he can compete with those teams.
Gerry, most people associate you with CurlingZone, but you're also, Mr. Curling Tour, I guess is the best way of putting it. I know you've had some changes to the tour this past year that are going to be very beneficial. One of the things that I thought about as you were talking about Schuster is sort of how people develop into, a John Schuster type team. And it looks like there's been some changes that will benefit teams that are sort of just getting out on the road. There's some spiels and some new locations this year in the U.S. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So one of the things that I've been working on for quite some time now, and it's really where my passion in the sport started with the Ontario Curling Tour, for example, and is being able to build and develop that kind of minor league system for the sport. I think our sport really aligns itself well with something like baseball, where there's the different levels, A, AA, AAA, and when you look at some of the top players in the game, they're definitely on the older side. A lot of the top skips, and they're already up into their 30s, 40s, which is older for a sport for sport in general, but it takes time for these players to develop their game, and so when you look at the United States, for example, there's a pretty big jump from the club level to get into some of the fields in the Midwest. You got St. Paul, you got Duluth, Evelyn, the U.S. Open in Blaine, and what we really need is a way to, or an opportunity for teams to go out and play competitive games, get some experience, get that experience on Sunday, stepping on the ice in a quarterfinals match, and how do you prepare from there? The next step, getting to a final, winning that final when you're the only game on the ice, and that confidence that comes from winning. Winning an event, and there's no experience other than going out and doing it. And so we've got Fort Wayne, Kalamazoo, that started up events last season. Their $400 entry. For the sake of the club, $100 goes back into the club's coffers to help support and grow the facility and everything, because they need to be successful at the end of the day with the events they run. And then the rest of the money's in the purse for the teams to play for. You're looking somewhere around $1,000 to $1,500 first prize, depending on the number of teams you get. And you look at the competition level in these events, and they're not very high. You're looking at some teams that aren't overly strong yet, but it's you got to start somewhere.
Yeah.
And the most exciting thing on my end is to see what a team like Darryl Sobering did last season, where they went and they won the event in Fort Wayne. I believe one of their players was a first or second year curler, and Darryl and the rest of the guys are pretty new to the competitive scene, but they gained some important experience in Fort Wayne, and then went to the challenge round and ground out a win in the C qualifier to book their spot into the nationals last season in Everett. So year one, a pretty big success for these small events that we ran, but it makes total sense. Confidence breeds. Confidence creates winning. Winning creates confidence, and the cycle can continue. Curling is, again, one of these funny sports where you got to believe it to be able to do it, and it's fun. So we've got Darcy and Paul Ellerby are going to run an event in Lakeville, Minnesota, which is the southern part of the Twin Cities, I believe, and they're going to do that one in October. We're working on trying to get some events in other locations. We've got the Mountain Pacific mixed doubles event in Evergreen in Oregon as well, joining the World Curling Tour as a will be considered a Challenger Series event for that discipline. So Matt Sussman is working on getting an event going at a Bowling Green as well at the Black Swamp Curling Center, Curling Club there. And the sky's the limit. We'd love to see any club interested in running one of these events. The intent is to draw local teams. We want to see, most of the teams come from, a few hours range of the area, but then there's opportunities for teams to travel, to come and play these events. And there's order of merit points available in these events, which goes towards qualifying for nationals. And this year with the changes to the standard, I think these smaller events play a part or could potentially play a part in qualifying teams for the Worlds.
That sounds really exciting, Gerry. And, it actually sounds a little bit like that Tier 1, Tier 2 system at the Slams. It's just a little bit different format. And you got these regional qualifying tournaments that, can kind of propel somebody forward if they have the gumption to do it.
Yeah, that's 100% true. And that's why I'm really excited about the Tour Challenge for the same reasons. And continuing to work on building multiple tiers in the sport. The idea is that, if you're a young team, let's take some of the teams that play out of the junior nationals, for example. Your top couple of teams, your playoff teams, they're probably not going to have a hard time finding somebody to play with into men's and women's play. The issue becomes, the next group of teams, the kids who are really interested in continuing to play competitive curling, but, they're not necessarily going to be noticed yet out of juniors. They're mid-tier, the teams that come close to getting to nationals. These events are meant to give them a place to play, an opportunity to go out and still continue learning the game, because many players get better and continue to grow as they graduate after juniors. And there's lots of time to find your spot in the game. And then from there, if you're a club team who enjoys going out and playing some good competitive games, but don't really have an interest in going any further with it, these events are for those teams as well. It's something that's close to home. You can sleep in your own bed, keep the cost down, and go out and get some competitive games in. There's no need to want to graduate any further. We want to see those teams be able to play some games too, and you never know. They might pique their interest and take a crack at one of the bigger events in the country.
All right, wrapping up with Gerry Geurts, President and CEO of CurlingZone, Operations Manager with the World Curling Federation. Also, check them out. Curling Tour. Excuse me. Curling Tour. My fault. CurlingZone.com. The awesome redesign. Also, the Grand Slam of Curling.com. Biggest question really is we all crave more curling here in the U.S. Where can you watch this weekend, or starting, I guess, middle of the week into the weekend? Can we watch the first slam of the upcoming season? Can we watch it? Where can we watch it?
I don't know the details yet. I know they had it all set up last season, but there should be something posted at www.thegrandslamofcurling.com. And keep an eye out for that information. Follow CurlingZone on Facebook and Twitter. We'll be sure to post something if we find it there. And I'm sure 12th End Sports Network will be posting the links as well once we know what's going on there too.
Yeah, we always got you covered, Gerry. Joe, I don't know what else. We hit on a lot of things. I know we're going to have Gerry back again next week. We got a fairly juicy topic we'll wait and save and tease here at the end of this, episode 1 of the Extra and podcast, but one that I think a lot of people are going to want to tune in and listen to next
Yeah, Gerry, I want to thank you for joining us on the Extra End today. You've been a great partner to us as we've been launching our website and our nationals coverage, and it's good to have you as our first guest here on roundtable guest on the Extra End. Thanks a lot, Gerry.
Thanks. I'm really excited to see where this is going to go, and it's great to see more coverage of the sport in the United States. You guys are so hungry for the sport down there. spent some time curling in some summer spiels the last few years now, and the passion and the love for the game on ice conditions that are not not the greatest at times, just it is overwhelmingly amazing. And it's one thing I always tell people that if you're at all lacking in your passion for the game, go curl in some of these summer spiels, and you'll be rejuvenated and fall in love with the game as you see how the American curlers have really fallen in love with the sport. And I see some huge potential growth for the sport in the United States, and looking forward to continuing working and chatting with you guys.
Well, safe travels to Regina for the first slam. Gerry, I know that we'd be remiss if we didn't at least say good luck. Hope everything goes off great curling to everybody that's playing, and certainly all the best to you and your Toronto Blue Jays as they look forward to finishing off this season in the MLB. I know that's another passion of yours, but that's another topic for another day, my friend.
Thanks, guys. Take care.
Thanks, Gerry. That's Gerry Geurts right here on the Extra In podcast. Great stuff right there, Joe.
Yeah, absolutely, Price. Gerry's one of the true gems of the sport.
All right, we'll be right back here on the Extra In podcast to put a bow on this thing and to close up shop, tell you what's ahead next week right here on the Extra In podcast. We'll be right back.
Price, as the holidays approach and the kids are back to school, you should know that a simple click on the Amazon tab at TESN.US can support curling webcasters across the country. When you buy through the Amazon tab at TESN.US, a small portion of the sales goes to TESN affiliates. So if you like TESN, please remember to support our affiliates by clicking on the Amazon tab at TESN.US. Bookmark it, please.
All right, welcome back into the Extra In podcast with the 12th In Sports Network, powered by Isagenix. Man, what a great inaugural first episode we have had here. Just we cannot thank our sponsors here enough. Certainly Isagenix, our title sponsor, along with Amazon, Hardline Curling, and Dynasty Curling. Thank you so much for supporting the Extra In this season and this week as we get off the ground. And speaking of thanks, special thank you to Coach Phill Drobnick and Gerry Geurts, our featured guest, Phill Drobnick, we talked to early in the podcast, and then the roundtable there in that last segment with Joe Calabrese. And great stuff there as we got a lot of ground to cover here as we march toward the U.S. Olympic curling trials coming up starting November the 11th in Omaha, Nebraska, at beautiful Baxter Arena there on the campus of University of Nebraska at Omaha. Just a fantastic facility. Cannot wait to be there again for the curling trials. All 7 teams, which we will be previewing here on the Extra In podcast. And those previews with the teams, they begin next week. We got a big one ahead next week here as we will talk with Vicky Persinger and Jamie Sinclair from Team Sinclair. Caught up with them. We'll talk a little bit about their summer and their upcoming march toward the trials as well. We will have a bonus interview next week with the newest member of Team Heath McCormick. That would be Rich Ruinen, as we talked with Phill a little bit about earlier there here in the show. But Rich Ruinen, a little bit of a bonus conversation we'll have with him next week here on the Extra In. And one of the juicy topics that we've got, did USA Curling get it right with these 7 teams? It's certainly a big topic of discussion around USA Curling, getting ready for those trials. We also have a really awesome, cool giveaway that you can sign up to win. This is one awesome prize, as Joe mentioned a lot earlier in the podcast. Man, do we have some really cool giveaways that we're going to be giving away every single week. Where you want to stay tuned for that? At 12th In Sports on Twitter and on Facebook at the 12th In Sports Network. You can keep up to date on every single podcast that drops, contests, upcoming guests, everything that we've got coming here on the Extra In. As we get ready to close up shop here, one thing we got to make sure we touch base on, where can you find the Extra In? Real easy, guys. The Apple Podcast app on your phone. You can subscribe there by just searching the Extra In. You can go to iTunes on your laptop computers. You can go to Stitcher, Google Play, and, of course, at the 12th End Sports Network online. That's TESN.US/podcast. Again, TESN.US/podcast. You get us right there on the 12th End Sports Network. All right, been a lot of fun here. Ready to wrap this thing up. Cannot wait until next week. We got a lot of great stuff coming to you all season long here on the Extra End podcast, as we will preview the faces, the teams, everything about the coaches around the world of USA Curling and the elite athletes here that will take the ice in Omaha, Nebraska for the U.S. Olympic Curling Trials. All right, signing off here, Price Atkinson. Appreciate every single person here tuning in, listening, checking us out. I hope you'll be back again next Thursday as a new episode drops every single Thursday of the Extra End podcast with the 12th End Sports Network crew, powered by Isagenix. We'll see you next week.
Thanks for being with us on this edition of the Extra End podcast with Price Atkinson. Follow Price and the 12th End Sports Network crew on Twitter and Facebook to stay up on our weekly contests, giveaways, and guests for upcoming episodes of the Extra End podcast, powered by Isagenix.